Hello and welcome to my spoiler review for Alita Battle Angel, where we have plenty to discuss. Because this movie, while it clearly only scratches the surface of the manga's mythology, and boys, there are a lot of it, as we'll discuss, I tried to kind of look into it because I wanted answers. But those answers seem like, I can see James Cameron and his writing partner, Letitia Calagridis or something. I can sense their frustration of being like, how the heck are we going to adapt this thing? And they said they did the first 4 books of the manga, but I think maybe they should have done maybe just 2. Although, as you know from my review, I did like the movie, but it introduces, and in some cases just frustratingly teases, a lot of really interesting elements. And that's what we're going to discuss here. For instance, Edward Norton is revealed to be playing Nova, the villain secretly controlling everything and everyone, sometimes literally from above. It took me a few shots, especially because Norton himself never actually speaks, we'll get to that in a moment, but for me to even realize it was Edward Norton, particularly because he seems to be playing James Cameron, at least that's how he's styled in the movie. And I thought that was hilarious because a lot of people think that James Cameron is an egotistical, heartless control freak. And so I'm like, was James Cameron in on this choice? Like, that's hilarious, make it like me. Or does he at least realize that Norton and Rodriguez are messing with him? Very funny. Anyway, again, Norton never utters a line. What a waste! I wonder if Edward Norton, maybe that's on the cutting room floor, but I wonder if Edward Norton was like, really? You have me in costume standing here? You don't want me to say anything? But his character does speak through others, taking over bodies via maybe Wi-Fi, their cybernetic implants. Primarily Mahershala Ali's Vector, and you know that happens when Mahershala Ali's eyes turn blue. And on that note, I didn't love the optics of a white guy using a black guy as a puppet. I was like, oh, this is not great. And I also didn't love, Mahershala Ali could have done more with it, although he looks very cool in the movie. But he could have done more with this situation because he didn't dramatically change his voice or speaking pattern when Nova was controlling him. And we've seen, there's a lot of shapeshifter storylines out there, and we've seen some actors do an amazing job with this. Particularly, I think the MVP is still True Blood. That they did some fantastic work there with actors truly imitating who's supposed to be controlling them, or who they really are. But instead, Mahershala Ali, when he was being controlled, he just became kind of stiff and fancy, not the kind of strong acting choice that one would expect from an Oscar winner. But again, as I said, at least he looks cool. He brings some swagger to the role. While fellow Oscar winner Jennifer Connolly, a lot of Oscar winners in this movie, although I think only Christoph Waltz really proves that he's worthy of the statue of having one. But Jennifer Connolly is boringly bland as Dr. Chiren. And while I bought her and Christoph Waltz, speaking of Waltz, as former lab partners, I definitely felt they worked together on some projects. I never saw the remnants of any spark from them being former lovers. I know that they had a tragic backstory that was explained, with Alita being both of their second chance after their handicapped daughter was tragically killed. I don't really know how much that stuff was even needed, quite frankly. I thought, Ito just seemed like a nice guy, and rescuing Alita was like the right thing to do, and maybe he never had a kid. Again, like Geppetto. I don't really know if they needed to have the movie has so much to do. Does it really need to give valuable time to this story, which I didn't really think anybody did anything with? I guess it just explained that he had that nice body available for Alita, the really intricately beautiful one, but she destroyed it anyway. He should have been like, thanks for that, chopping into Cuisinarting, the only thing I have left of my dead daughter. All right, so anyway, the coolest thing, though, about Dr. Chiren, played by Jennifer Connolly, is what happened to her. This is amazing. And that's that Vector sent her up to Zalem literally in pieces. And that's how he reveals that people do get up to the city in the sky, and that's as body parts and organs that Nova needs for his experiments. So Vector not only is a chop shop for cybernetics, but also for, flesh and, for flesh and organs. That was and the way it was revealed, where he opened up this really beautiful chic suitcase, like a trunk, and there was Jennifer Connolly's character, seemingly still functional, but just no longer having a body and like rearranged. So like her eyes were here and then her brain was behind it in a jar, and she still seemed to be working. I got the sense that she was in there, and I was like, oh my God, it was deliciously dark. And I was upset that the movie opened that door, but yet didn't walk through it because they wanted to remain a family film. I mean, that's the kind of creepy stuff that sticks with you and is the holy grail for genre writers, particularly of darker stories. That stuff that you're like, damn, that's a good idea. It's haunting, but in the best way possible. Then, the other surprise cameo, as you might recall from my non-spoiler review, I said there were two. Well, the other one is Michelle Rodriguez, seen only in flashbacks as the cyborg who trained Alita. And in direct contrast to Norton, Rodriguez only speaks and is never personally seen, as her character is also fully animated. But her voice is so distinct, I recognized her immediately. She should do more animation voiceover work. I saw from her resume, because I was like, has she? She's done like a film here and there, and she's done a lot of video game work, but she has a really rich, expressive voice. I would think one of the bigger animation studios would get on that. Now, all the stuff about Mars versus Earth was really interesting to me, and I have a lot of questions about it that I'd like to have answered someday. Primarily, did humanity diverge, right? Who's on Mars fighting with Earth? Is it humans that went up there and, like kind of like how England sent a lot of people to the United States and the United States wanted to be separate? Is it kind of like that situation? That's pretty interesting. And also, how did the Martians become so much more technologically advanced? And is everyone on Mars a cyborg or just the military? And why are there military cyborgs like dolls? Even Michelle Rodriguez's character, it was like a lot of Bratz dolls running around. It's like, interesting choice. They only seem to have one type of soldier too. Maybe that was just Alita's unit. But I just was curious as to the reasoning behind it. I didn't have a problem with it. I just would like it explained. Furthermore, as I said, a lot of questions. Someone might be like, oh, if you read the manga, you would know, or watch the anime. Well, I don't know. Am I that curious to watch that stuff? I like the way it was introduced here, and I've become attached to these versions of the characters. We'll get to what I'd like to see happen going forward. But anyway, how did this last human stronghold on Earth survive? Why did Mars retreat and not come back after their defeat? And what's happening on Mars right now? What did Nova have to do with all of this? And how did he rise to power up there? And how did Alita, this really bothered me, how did Alita survive for 300 years in that garbage dump, especially after Ito made it clear that her human brain, I'm so frustrated I can't even speak, that her human brain needs nourishment to survive. What, did she have rotted away? Where has she been? I suspect it has something to do with Nova. And I'm not sure, I think she was drawn to Nova. All that stuff was very sketchy. Again, despite all these problems, I still like the movie, and I want to know. I genuinely want to know the answers to these questions. And as I said, I did start to kind of look online for the answers, but as I can see this is a very rich, ornate story, and it makes me feel that this really should be a streaming series, animated or a live action. That's probably the best way to explore this for Western audiences, because as we all know, it's already been very popular in the East. And then, of course, there's Hugo. When I mentioned him in my non-spoiler review, some fans were like, please tell me he dies. He dies! We're going to talk about that. But first I want to say that I liked that he and his friends were scavengers for Vector, not just mugging people, but cutting them up and dismantling them for their machine parts. That was brutal. I love that. As I said, again, deliciously dark. But it was weird, because thanks to the casting choices and the tone of the film, it played like a Disney Channel version of that. So it didn't quite get there, even though I think it had the makings of being something that was super dark. His romance with Alita was also a little too The Little Mermaid for me, with her becoming oddly obsessed with the first human guy that she meets. I wish the movie would have made it more clear, I was going to say more clear, but I don't think they made it clear at all, that her willingness to do anything to make Hugo happy, even at her own expense, is not a healthy relationship. Like he said, it was very intense when she was like, I'd literally she literally takes her heart out of her chest and says, I'll give it to you. I'm like, Alita, I think Ito made it pretty clear. I like that she's like a Pans or something, right? Really cool name for her cyborg body. She's a living weapon. But I'm like, you made it pretty clear that you're a very intricate piece of technology that hasn't been around for a while, so I don't think you can just swap out parts like that. But they just made it seem intense, where I was kind of like, wow, you were like, oh, this is not healthy, Alita. But then fascinatingly, which kind of makes up for that, they fridged Hugo. Now, fridging, as we had this discussion with Avengers Infinity War, it started off with a Green Lantern comic that was called out for doing this. But movies and entertainment does this all the time, where a female character is killed to provide emotional resonance and growth for the male character, like an emotional story point. And Gamora is a great example of fridging. The character really only exists for that moment. Because Gamora, I know she has a really rich history in the comics, but it's never really materialized in the movie. She's never been more than Peter Quill's girlfriend and Thanos' daughter. That's really how she's existed in the films, and it's problematic. And you see it in movies too, like for instance in the Bourne films, they kill, also Bond, they kill off the girl and the woman, and they're like, we're gonna get a new one next movie, get excited, and it's like, it's been a problem. So, but it was weird though to see it flipped around here and done here with the male character. They're like, we're gonna have a new male love interest for the next movie, get excited, and I was like, so weird to see it done the other way around. It's the pendulum effect. It goes both ways, to both extremes, and then it settles in the middle in a nice place for everybody. So I think we're clearly in the upward swing in the feminist perspective right now. It's interesting to see. But don't get too upset about it because it's going to swing back to the middle. All right, so I was also really impressed with the cyborg bounty hunters, particularly Ed Skrein's pretty boy Zapan. The intricate detail work on his back was breathtaking. It looked real, and I was so cool. I was like, who designed that? It was as cool as his blade that could cut anything. And not only is he beautifully rendered in the movie, but I loved that he wanted revenge against this female cyborg for humiliating him. I thought that was really a modern motivation. I thought that was great. He beautifully was on the outside, he was ugly on the inside. It was great. And by the way, I said female cyborg because I was like, Alita's not really a girl, but she's not really a woman either, even though she tried to fill herself out with her body that could morph to how she saw herself. And I was kind of not too happy with the implication of that in the movie either. Like the most ideal thing would be some kind of girl/woman hybrid. And Zapan clearly was interested in her in a sexual way. And I guess he was not a great person, so he would not be against underage dating. But the whole thing was really messy. I was like, but he comes up with a fate worse than death for Alita, and that's killing Hugo, the man she loves. And he comes close. Zapan comes very close, even though Alita at the very end manages to outsmart him. But to Zapan's credit, he does set events in motion that eventually do lead to Hugo's death at the finger of Nova, right? Once again, Nova pushes a button and something pretty devastating and permanent happens. And then on the flip side, I love that Alita came up with a fate worse than death for Zapan as well, and that's literally slicing off his beautiful face, the one part of his humanity that he had maintained. But because he's 99% cyborg, he stays alive, holding his face in his hands. That was great. That was really poetic. Nicely done, Alita. Although I have to say, what's with poor Idara Victor as Christoph Waltz's nurse? I mean, she had a cool, fake cyborg hand that I guess they wanted to show off, but for the most part, she just stood there like, unfortunate characters in Hollywood's past, never having anything really to say or contribute to the conversation. It didn't seem like Christoph Waltz needed her, quite frankly. I mean, I'm glad she got the work, but it was weird that they put her character in the movie and then did absolutely nothing with her. I can understand that wasn't more awkward on set. Again, maybe it's on the cutting room floor. But when they watched the edit, they should have been like, this looks bad. Finally, I'd also love to further explore the pros and cons over being, as the lingo says in the movie, a meatbag versus a hard body. Like Jorge Lindenberg Jr. says, I don't understand Hugo's attraction to Alita. I'm not into hard bodies. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting conversation. Why not? And why would someone be? And how would that work? I just thought it was really, really interesting. And I would love to have seen further how the two, meatbags and hard bodies, coexist in this world, both professionally and personally. Cool stuff. Again, there's just too much really for anyone to explore here in a movie. And I think to Rodriguez and James Cameron's credit, they got pretty darn close. And it still works, even though there's a lot of holes and a lot of stuff that's not covered. It's still, you walk away, I felt, at least, I would describe it as my interest has been piqued, and I'd like to see more. I'm really hoping that Netflix, or maybe Disney Plus, after the Fox acquisition, right, turns this into a streaming series. So what did you think of Alita Battle Angel? What interested you? And if you didn't care for the film, what didn't interest you? I'd also be really curious to hear from those of you who are familiar with the source material, because I'm sure you have at least some of the answers to the questions that I asked West here? And also, is it at least fun to see your beloved character getting some attention in the West? It's very slowly, not as fast, although it took comics, when you think about it, a long time to get to the silver screen. But manga and anime, like video games, continues to struggle. But I think both are making progress. And I would qualify this movie, quite frankly, as progress. And then also, how would you like to see Alita Battle Angel continue in the West? Streaming service, more movies, or was once enough? All right, again, share those thoughts down below. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.